Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and before we begin, we want to remind you again that for more of the best content from Israel, sign up today for our streaming platform, ILTV Plus, at iltv.tv. Now, coming up in today's newscast, Western powers convening to discuss heavy-handed sanctions on Russia as Moscow moves forwards with its invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, new reports revealing the extent of Hezbollah's surveillance following their drone incursion earlier this week. And finally, the height of so-called apartheid exposed again for the fraud that it is. Israel welcoming its first ever Muslim Supreme Court justice. The top news tonight, Israel sparking controversy over moving its embassy out of Kiev. This as Jerusalem increasingly pressured into choosing sides in the conflict, Russia swiftly moving forwards with its plans to invade Ukraine.
Считаю необходимым принять уже давно назревшее решение. Незамедлительно признать независимость и суверенитет Донецкой Народной Республики и Луганской Народной Республики.
A grim sign of things to come. Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring overnight that Ukraine's breakaway Donetsk and Lugansk regions, collectively known as the Donbass, are now sovereign states recognized by Russia. Experts alleging that Putin's announcement, as well as recent Russian troop movements along the border, confirming Moscow's intentions to invade westwards.
Essentially, this is about a kind of copy of 2014 when Russia illegally annexed Crimea, and now they are doing this now to a part of eastern Ukraine, which undermines even further the territorial integrity of this country.
Likewise, Putin attempting to undermine the authorities in Kiev, essentially calling for Ukrainian leadership to immediately surrender the state.
От тех, кто захватил и удерживает власть в Киеве, мы требуем незамедлительно прекратить боевые действия. В противном случае вся ответственность за возможное продолжение кровопролития будет целиком и полностью на совести правящего на территории Украины режима.
Western powers then blasting Moscow on the international stage as forcing the world towards the brink of war, and the US, the UK, and the EU, among others, preparing to impose strict sanctions on Russia's growing economic network around the globe.
We will immediately institute a package of economic sanctions, which I think, as people would expect, targeted not just at entities in Donbass, in Lugansk and Donetsk, but in Russia itself, targeting Russian economic interests as hard as we can. This is, I should stress, just the first barrage of UK economic sanctions against Russia, because we expect, I'm afraid, that there is more Russian irrational behavior to come.
That said, world leaders saying they're still holding out for diplomatic solutions. Now, meanwhile, in further affirmation that a war is likely coming in the next few days, Israel finally deciding to move its Ukrainian embassy and staff out of the capital in Kiev and into the western city of Lviv. The move supposedly following consultations with various international bodies regarding the enmity that's been growing along the border. And the consulate in Lviv already working feverishly to extract Jews and Israelis out of the country as promised via land routes to neighboring Hungary, Poland, and Romania. The foreign ministry estimating that some 4,000 Israelis left Ukraine in the past week, while 7,000 to 8,000 still remain. In announcing the move, however, Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid careful not to jump on the sanctions bandwagon just yet. Lapid saying that Israel will continue with its wait-and-see approach. Still, this didn't stop Israeli Channel 12 News from misquoting Lapid as saying that Israel will support sanctions against Russia, a misquotation quickly picked up across the region, including in Russian-owned but Arabic-speaking media. In fact, perhaps in attempts to force Israel into choosing a side in the conflict, the Russian RT headline in Arabic alleging that Lapid said, quote, "If a war breaks out between Russia and Ukraine, it's only natural that Israel will favor the United States," end quote. Again, though, to be clear, Israel has made no such promises or assertions on the record. In other news, new reports now unveiling the precise flight path that Lebanese terror group Hezbollah's surveillance drone took across northern Israel last weekend. And along the route, at least a dozen major cities and Israeli military bases. Joining me with the analysis is Middle East expert and lecturer at Bar-Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kadar, as always, it's great to have you with us. Now, of what bases and of what cities did this drone capture footage?
Well, as much as I saw in the media, there is no line or no route to be found, but we can assume that it came onto Israel some dozens of kilometers.
To watch full episodes of ILTV's Israel Daily and tons of other content from Israel, visit our website at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app.